Okay, hi guys, I'm Ross Deed for Orwell Housing, and welcome back to another of our community conversations, this time in association with the Orwell Cost of Living Toolkit, the new online resource that connects our community to the tools and services across the region that really make a difference. Now we've got our second interview this week, and one that I'm really looking forward to. It's a charity, it's a name that I'm sure you've heard of around the local region. So I'm looking really forward to chatting to Ezra Hewing from Suffolk Mind. Ezra, how are you doing?
I'm very well, Ross. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your time today. I think we really wanted to get you guys involved with the conversations we're having this week around sort of the cost of living toolkit and that kind of thing, because when we're kind of brainstorming things that we felt were really important to the kind of the wider spectrum, mental health was something that came to mind as something that we regularly sort of champion within the organisation as well. So for anyone that maybe hasn't come across the work that your charity do, can you give us a little bit of a background about Suffolk Mind and how you kind of help the communities you work with as well?
Sure. So as you've said, Suffolk Mind are a mental health charity. We're the kind of the Suffolk branch of the national mental health charity Mind. And we provide services that reflect an idea in mental health, which is called the mental health continuum. So the mental health continuum is the idea that rather than looking at diagnostic labels like depression or schizophrenia or whatever it is, the mental health runs between a state of well-being at one end and very severe mental ill health at the other. And stress is the crossover point. If we're exposed to stress, and it will trigger symptoms that a psychiatrist would look at and perhaps give somebody a diagnostic label. And so to support people across that continuum, we have supported housing projects where the tenants and residents are living with and managing very severe conditions like schizophrenia, borderline personality disorder, bipolar, that kind of a thing, major depression. We also have a service called Waves that exists to support people with traits of borderline personality disorder who may struggle to manage strong moods and emotions and maintain relationships as well. We have a telephone support service called Suffolk Night Owls, which it operates in the evenings when many other services are closed. And that's for anybody that registers with that service on our website, where they can book an appointment to call somebody to seek support with whatever it is that's bothering them at that time. We run counselling services. Courses and workshops. We have a very busy training team out working with organisations all across the region, both in the charitable sector, but also with local government and with businesses too. And as I say, busy counsellors as well, who are working with people, whatever their issues are, whatever it is that might be causing them distress and giving rise to the symptoms of mental ill health, and hopefully helping people to stay as close to the well-being end of that continuum as possible during really difficult times.
Definitely. One of the things we've noticed over the past few months here at Orwell is the need to kind of support our communities in some more ways than maybe we have done in the past, because of the current climate and other things that have kind of cropped up recently. What have you noticed over the past few months as you talk to your own customers and colleagues with the rise of energy bills and that kind of thing, and kind of how mental health has impacted that?
So, I talked about stress being the crossover point on the mental health continuum, and stress isn't random. It's nature's way of sort of warning us that there are key emotional needs that are not being met in our lives. And some of those needs are to do with things like feeling connected to other people, having healthy relationships, and feeling that we're not isolated and that we're part of the community. Some of them are to do with feeling valued and respected by others, and also feeling that we've got meaning and purpose in our lives. But a couple of really basic needs are the need for security and the need for control and autonomy, to feel that we've got a say over our lives and events which affect us. And of course, if people are worried about their financial security, so really basic stuff, and they're worried about whether they're going to be able to pay their energy bills, or whether they have to make a choice between paying their energy bills and putting food on the table, then that's going to be a cause of worry. You would expect that to affect the quality of people's sleep, and if their sleep is very poor, then they're likely to be left with. You need healthy sleep to get rid of worries and concerns from the previous day. So they're likely to wake up feeling, still anxious about these concerns, and it can be, be the case that those worries persist throughout the day and affect their ability to work and give attention to their loved ones. If our sleep is suffering for a period of time, then that can tip us into depression. So that's our need for security. It'd be very natural for people to be worried and concerned about paying bills and putting food on the table. Also, because there's so much uncertainty in the environment around things like job security, but also, rising costs and whether this is going to continue and what things are going to look like in the new year. Then our need for control and autonomy, to have a sense that we've got some kind of a say over our lives and the events that are affecting us, that need is likely to be unmet too. So you've got two very major needs, Ross, security and control. And if those needs are unmet, then people are going to suffer, and that's going to push them over that stress threshold. So as much as possible, we're sort of encouraging and working with people to give attention to what they can control and help them, as best we can, try and come up with strategies and plans to manage financially, and working in a very practical way. You might not think of mental health as necessarily a practical thing. We tend to think of it as what's going on in our heads, but as you've said, the environment affects people, so it's really practical stuff that can make a huge difference.
Yeah, and I guess also, I guess a lot of the time for many people, when they come in contact you, it's kind of a reactive process. So they're feeling in a certain way, and then they get into touch. But one of the things that we're really passionate about is looking at what can we do every day to help prevent those things and kind of build up our kind of muscle, as it were, around some of these things, which feels hugely important. And funny you mentioned the sleep as well. You're probably aware that we had a mental health and construction event recently, and your CEO kindly came and spoke, and I think that was a great light bulb moment for a lot of people, using your sleep as kind of a way of kind of getting into conversations with other people. Maybe if you're concerned about someone, it's easier to talk about how is your sleep rather than maybe sometimes how are you feeling sometimes, and so that was a really big takeaway. And also the sleep is a really big indicator on how the rest of our body may be functioning as well. Absolutely. because we need it so much in that respect. How do you think, if someone was watching this, and for whatever reason they felt that they're kind of like they just felt off, maybe they haven't had kind of mental health challenges in the past, but because of kind of all what's going on, maybe there's issues with family or other things outside their control, they just feel a little bit off. What would you say is the first kind of port of call, I guess, if you're feeling like that? Is it to go to your GP initially? Is it to reach out to organizations like yourself? Where would someone sort of start in that respect?
So the standard advice is, as you've said, Ross, to get in touch with your GP. If at the moment it's difficult sometimes to get a GP appointment, and often people are referred to online resources. So but do go and see your GP, but also look at local resources. If you're in the Suffolk area, go to suffolkmind.org.uk, and you can find all sorts of things on there which you can self-refer to, services and telephone support and what have you. But the first thing that I would really recommend people do is to complete something called an emotional needs audit. That's an online questionnaire, and what it will do is to help you. Most questionnaires, mental health questionnaires, really just identify symptoms. So that somebody, a clinical person, can make a decision about what intervention is right for you. But what the emotional needs audit does is different from that. It will help you to identify which emotional needs could be better met and why you're feeling a bit off. And that's really important, because stress, as I said before, stress isn't random. We need to know, the person needs to know which unmet emotional needs are giving rise to any feelings of discomfort, any worries or concerns they may have, or any symptoms which are more serious. And once you've done that, if you know that your stress is being caused by an unmet need for security or an unmet need for community, perhaps you're isolated, or perhaps your work doesn't have meaning and purpose anymore. Maybe you've been out of work for a while, maybe you're retired, and and so you're feeling like you don't have much purpose, much of a reason to get out of bed in the morning. And the emotional needs audit will help you to identify that. Maybe you're living in a busy household where there isn't really any private time, and your need for privacy, downtime to just be on your own and process things. Maybe that's not being met, and as a result, you're taking worries to bed with you, and that's it, interrupting your sleep. When you can identify what the unmet need is, then you're in a more powerful position. You can identify what steps you need to take to better meet that need. What can I do to reduce isolation? Are there people I can call? Is there somebody I can speak to? When I call my GP, am I able to say, look, I know what the problem is. I'm isolated. What can you do? And then the GP ought to be able to, or the person on reception ought to be able to connect you with social prescribing. Or it might be that you can identify other groups in your local area where you can go and see somebody and get better connected with people again. So that's always the first thing. Now, of course, let's say you're listening to this and you're like, yeah, well, I know that. I know I'm worried about my finances. I don't need an audit or some clever clocks from Suffolk Mind to tell me that. Nonetheless, even if you do know what the cause is, when we're stressed, it's more difficult to think about first steps and more difficult to get motivated. So other things you can do are learning things to help calm down and reduce stress levels. And the simplest way of doing that is stuff like 7-11 breathing. And again, if you go to suffolkmind.org.uk, you'll find really simple relaxation exercises that you can learn quickly, and they take effect quickly. You don't need to do like an 8-week course or be a kind of a mindfulness guru or whatever it is to reduce your stress levels. Other resources you can find on our website, on our 20ZZ page, are sleep resources that can give you lots of key steps. There's lots of advice out there. Often it's really simple things like having a shower or a bath 2 hours before you go to bed, so your body begins to cool down and you begin to feel sleepy. Having a routine before you go to bed. So even if you do have worries and concerns and unmet needs, you use sleep to try and calm yourself down, because sleep evolved hundreds of thousands of years ago for exactly that reason. It's much better and more sophisticated than any other intervention you'll find, that's for sure. So taking steps to get better quality sleep, just doing those 3 things: identifying unmet needs, learning how to do some 7-11 breathing, and putting some measures in place to improve the quality of your sleep, will make a huge difference to you and the people around you, so you're in a better place to cope at a really difficult time.
Yeah. 2 things that I take away from that toolkit being a fantastic resource is, you're kind of putting yourself in a better position when you then go and speak to a GP, because you're able to maybe understand it a little bit more, and you have not then having to go back and forth maybe to further GP appointments. You're in the best position you can be. But also I'm guessing initially sometimes what we may think is the problem, once we've gone through an exercise like that, it may be that it's actually something else. Is that the case for many people that take it?
Yeah, absolutely that. People can often be surprised. They may discover they're like, well, do you know what? That's absolutely right. I've been so focused on getting up in the morning, getting my kids out of bed, getting them washed, getting them fed, getting to school, going to work all day, coming home, getting the kids fed, put them to bed. And then I felt so kind of like I haven't really achieved anything with my life. So I'm just sitting in front of Netflix and just binge watching serials, and that's actually getting in the way of me doing the things I used to really enjoy. So I haven't seen my friends for a while, or I haven't done that hobby or interest that I was really passionate about, or I haven't been out for a walk or a run because it's dark and it's cold. And I felt much better in the summer when I was going out for a run once or twice a week, when I was doing the park run. That's what I've been missing. And I don't know why it was that I forgot that. But when we become stressed, it's easy to forget what was working for us before, and the pace of life often means that we lose track or lose contact with friends and loved ones. And all of us have needs for emotional connection, to share attention, and to feel part of the wider community. But it's easy to neglect those things and let them fall by the wayside when we become overwhelmed with with life events and worries and concerns and what have you. So just slowing down for a while to take stock. As you say, Ross, often we can we suddenly realize that there are needs we've not been giving any attention to, and that can make all the difference in the world.
Yeah. I want to speak to also maybe, there may be people watching this who are directly feel that they are feeling these ways, but also maybe if they have a friend or family member that may be in the family, and I guess have some conversation around the best way in kind of helping them, because they may not be privy to this information. Maybe let's talk about, okay, so an Orwell housing colleague has watched this email, and maybe they know, maybe they've got someone in their home or a friend who they may not be privy to this information. Now they don't want to kind of go and kind of shouting the gospel at them kind of thing to
Yeah.
kind of say, look, you must do this. What would your kind of encouragement be to how to approach those conversations with people that you love, who you want to do the best for and get them in the right position, but you're conscious also that they might not be at the right time to take those steps?
So it's difficult to answer that question without knowing the exact
Of course.
situation.
Yeah.
But one approach that you can take is a bit of a kind of instead of saying to the person, look, I'm a bit worried and concerned about you. Would you call this number and get some help?
Mm.
Another approach that you could take is to say to the person, look, we've had some, at Allwell Housing, we work with people, we work to support people who often have very poor mental health. And the other day, we had some people from Suffolk Mind, or whatever resource it is, whatever organisation it is you want to signpost to, and they were telling us about this. But I was a little bit sceptical, to be honest with you, because we've had a lot of this before. It'd be really good to get a second opinion from somebody who's got experience of that kind of a thing to see what you think. If I send you the link, would you have a look at it and tell me what you think?
Mm. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
sounds a bit sneaky, and it is. I'll be honest, but it's a kind of an indirect way of going about things. Sometimes, like if you don't want to break rapport with somebody or harm, why that's kind of a bit jargony. What I mean is, you don't want to damage a relationship with the person.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
don't want them to feel like they're being judged or pushed when they're not ready.
Mm.
And putting them in the driving seat and saying, look, you know better than I've been recommended this, and it might be
Mm.
nonsense. So can you have a look and give me some feedback so I can share it with my colleagues at work, so I know whether or not it's any good for the people that I'm working with at Allwell Housing.
Yeah. I think that's
Now,
great.
yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm putting Suffolk Mind's reputation on the line there, because people might come back and trash our work. But I'm you have to kind of put your money where your mouth is. So kind of if it's not up to par, then people will tell us. But
Yeah.
overwhelmingly, people find what it is that we have to share
Yeah.
useful, and that it's in plain English, which is accessible to people, and not full of loads of clinical jargon and other barriers to people accessing the help they need when they need it. So try that approach for people and see what happens.
Yeah, I hope you don't mind. It's going off piece a little bit there, but I
Sure.
just thought that I think there's a lot of missed opportunities sometimes when we feel that we are in a position to help someone
Yeah.
else, but we may feel uneasy. We may feel it's not our place. We may feel that we just don't have the tools to kind of help them in a way that's not seen as kind of pushy or whatever. So I think that's great, and I think that's something that we can all sort of take on board. With in the current climate with things happening, have you guys seen a change in kind of how you support people recently, or has it kind of been business as usual in that respect?
In the sense of how we support people, it's been
Mm.
business as usual, but
Yeah.
the volume of course has increased.
Yeah.
We know that there are more people since pandemic and lockdown. We knew that that was going to have an effect on people at the very beginning. Sleep researchers, who nobody really listens to unless you're in the sleep research community, but they were telling us that if you read their papers, people were dreaming more than usual. They saw in sleep laboratories, they saw REM sleep, which is the phase of sleep when we dream,
Yeah.
suddenly increase and begin to look a lot like what you see in depression. When people are experiencing depression, they dream more and then they wake up exhausted and low in mood the next day. So we knew that was going to happen. It didn't take a rocket scientist to recognize that if people became isolated and if they were fearful of infection,
Mm.
if they were not able to work and they didn't have any control over that, if they weren't able to do work that gave them a sense of meaning and purpose and where they felt valued, that their stress levels would go up and they would feel unwell, and that it would take some time for that to return to healthy levels once lockdown lifted. And of course, what's happened is that we've come out of lockdown, and then there have been some other events outside of our control which have meant that stress levels have remained high. So that was always going to be an issue, and so the volume has increased, even if the nature of the work that we do has not changed that much. And we've been banging the drum about a way of thinking about mental health that puts people in the driving seat, helping them to understand that mental ill health is not random. It's caused by unmet emotional needs. So we weren't particularly surprised. And actually, lots of people, if there is a silver lining to recent events, it's that people have said to us that this, that they've come into contact with the ideas that we try to share, that it makes a lot more sense than, help that they might seek from elsewhere. There's more to mental health interventions than just trying to change the way that people think. Absolutely, we need to address negative thinking, but if you're worried about your finances and because of rising costs, that's not changing patterns of negative thinking isn't going to do anything to address that. But really, it's a reasonable response, isn't it, if you're worried about the cost of things, to that's not because you've got embedded patterns of negative thinking or something like that. Other silver linings are things like the widespread belief that depression was caused by low levels of serotonin, even though that's never been true and was discredited in the 1990s. It's taken a very long time for that understanding to become more widely accepted. Clearly, if depression doubled during lockdown and in response to the pandemic, it's fairly obvious that depression is not caused by low levels of serotonin. It's caused by uncertainty and unmet needs for control and unmet needs for security and what have you. So you see a lot less of academics and other people talking about those sorts of ideas, and a lot more talking about social prescribing, about the importance of getting people connected to community and helping them to get connected to the Citizens Advice Bureau and other organisations that can help them to manage their finances and get debt management plans in places. So a much more helpful shift towards practical interventions and community-based interventions rather than older, outdated ideas from the pharmaceutical industry and what have you.
Yeah, I think one of the things I noticed as well within my own sort of family and community as well is that, even though we had the lockdown period and through COVID, and, there was elements of anxiety and that kind of stuff, I think people forget also that it can come later on as well. So after that period of time, when maybe we've come back into working and back into life, as it were, that we can then kind of kick in with that, because I guess that shift is then so different from where we were before. I guess it comes with new anxieties around that. Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, I mean, one of that was an interesting period of time. People are asking us exactly that same question. I'm kind of, I haven't been to work for 18 months, 2 years. What's the office going to be like?
Yeah.
Or I've not had to take my kids to school. I haven't had to do the school run. I'm not familiar with shops, that kind of a thing. And what we would say to people is, there's the kind of patterns and routines that we would have been used to back in whenever it was, 2018, 2019. There are lots of things that you'd have done without a second thought. You might have known the route to work and to school so well that sometimes you kind of, you drive home from work thinking about what you've been doing, and then you wonder how the hell you got home, or and that kind of a thing. So encouraging people to reconnect with patterns that they were familiar with, hobbies and interests, or places that they would visit, whether it be local parks or whatever, and have and trust in the knowledge that you do have about how to handle things. And while people did have anxieties, as you say, Ross, those lifted reasonably quickly once people got back in touch with, doing things and, adapted to new patterns and ways of coping and managing. And I have faith that people will learn how to manage. They'll learn and they'll adapt. Humans are more resilient than they give themselves credit for. But their resilience, again, is rooted in how well their needs are met. So we're more resilient when we're part of a community, when we're connected to other people. We're more resilient when we've got some downtime to reflect and calm ourselves down. We're more resilient when we've got hobbies and interests and that keep us stretched and learning. We're more resilient when we're serving the needs of others as well, when we're volunteering or doing things to help other people, or when we see the work that we do through the lens of working with people that maybe are more vulnerable or have a particular need, or when we have a genuine interest in what other people's concerns are, that makes us more resilient. So recognizing that we're dependent upon one another. We're less resilient when we're isolated and when we're kind of acting out of self-interest rather than with concern for other people's needs.
Mm.
Yeah.
One of the other things that I just wanted to talk about as well was that, here at Allwell, we're part of a wider kind of vibrant business community, and I know that you do a lot of work with businesses as well. If there's any local businesses watching this over on LinkedIn or somewhere like that, how can they kind of help you guys? Is there any way that they can kind of connect with you or spread the word or anything like that, whether they can kind of share what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that we're keen to get people to do is and it's paid dividends over the years. Some of your partners will know this anyway. Attending what was formerly known as Your Needs Met, sometimes called Suffolk's Needs Met.
Yeah.
But it's now known as the Essentials. If you attend that will give you the framework to help you understand how good mental health is dependent upon meeting emotional needs. And you can find out more about that on our website. You can self-refer and book onto a free place. If you become a friend of Suffolk Mind, you get a free place on one of our public-facing courses. I know, Ross, that you met with John, our CEO, and he would have kind of given you a kind of an overview of the approach, a kind of an introduction, and we're always keen to come into organizations to do that. And most organizations that do that, when they can see how much sense it makes, and they're then keen to book training for the wider organization, and their members of staff, so that their staff can look after themselves, but also learn the skills to be able to look after each other more effectively. And I don't know if I'm allowed to mention their names, so I won't. But you can see across Suffolk, you will see if you're on LinkedIn, you'll see organizations reposting Suffolk Mind social media content, whether because they've had a fundraising day or because they've been to one of our training events, and they talk about mental health in a way that is completely different from organizations that don't. And you can tell the difference. There are some organizations who employ a lot of people in Suffolk Mind that have made a massive difference to their staff. Because they have put this idea at the heart of what they do. They're focused on meeting the emotional needs of their staff and their customers too. And as a result, those people are at least able to cope during really difficult times. And in some cases, they're thriving as well. They're doing really, really well. So follow the breadcrumbs.
Yeah, definitely. I think to finish up, I was just, if someone's watching this and maybe they're thinking, that sounds like me, or it sounds like someone else, or that I know of, and they're just a little bit reluctant to reach out. Maybe they haven't had a conversation with anyone about these sorts of things. For some, they've been holding on to them for ages, or maybe it's just something new. What would your kind of words of encouragement be about kind of just kind of taking that first step to reach out?
Just be curious. Just you can visit Suffolk Mind's website, suffolkmind.org.uk, and see what resonates with you, see what lands with you. Give yourself some time to think about it. Maybe complete an emotional needs audit anonymously, and maybe return to it and do it a few times, just to kind of begin to think about what can make a difference to you. Very often, a lot of the stigma around mental health is to do with labels and how people see themselves. as in, I'm a depressed person, or, I get anxious when other people don't, or, maybe I'll end up on medication, maybe I'll be locked up or something like that. By talking about emotional needs, it helps us to recognize that we've all got needs. That's something we all share in common. All of us need to feel safe. All of us need to feel we have a say over our lives. All of us need to be connected to other people and to have a sense of purpose. So recognizing that helps us to sort of like look at things from one remove. It's not our identity. It's not who we are. It's whether or not our needs are met. It's whether or not we have things which enable us to meet our needs and the skills to do so. And nobody's perfect at that. Nobody's cracked that. So taking the first step to learn about that can help us move in the right direction. And as you say, Ross, who doesn't want to talk about sleep? We have a very busy training team nowadays, but it used to be just me. And if you asked a room full of people who would like better quality sleep than they currently have, they'd all put their hands up, which is a good test that you're normal. If your sleep is rubbish at the moment, you're pretty normal. About 90% of people would like more sleep or better quality sleep. So if that's you, then visit our website and find out how you can begin to get better sleep. I mean, who doesn't want that?
Yeah. And that's the thing, isn't it? There's lots of beautiful byproducts that come from a lot of this stuff, which we just can't think of at the moment. But once we get into a place where we're getting support, you'll be amazed around some of the things that kind of shift, and it's puts you in a much better place. I just want to thank you so much for your time, Ezra.
Thank you for having me on.
No, it's been fantastic. And as I say, you guys were one of the first people that came to mind. And I think for many people in the sea of social media and information, it's sometimes a little bit tricky to know kind of where to go and what to do and that kind of thing. But I always say that, if you can go to your local support, you're bound to get some really great information, which are linked to other services locally as well, which I think is really important as well. And just to say for more, just thanks for all you do. On a personal level, I have friends, family who have used your services before and had an amazing outcome. So thanks for all you do. It's been amazing.
That's great to hear. Thank you, Ross. Thank you very much.
No worries at all. So until next time, guys, we're going to have another conversation real soon with another community conversation. Wherever you find this video, you'll find all of Suffolk Mind's information underneath, all the links and everything that we've spoken about today. But until next time, I've been Ross Dean from Orwellhausen. I'll see you again soon. Take care.